I have stopped using traditional job search platforms. Instead, I just use JobRite. JobRite is a smart job search platform that automates the search process by fetching only the data that matches your GitHub profile. Hello, fellow coders. In today's video, we will learn how to use React and Appwrite to create our very own smart job search platform. We will use React for the front end and Appwrite for the back end. Now, if you're updated in the tech world, you must know there are other frameworks built on top of React like Next, and they're really trending right now. But just to keep things simple, we're going to use React. And for the really new developers out there, if you don't know what React is a JavaScript library built by Facebook, and you can create reusable UI components. Now, what does that mean? Let's assume you're building your application the traditional way and you have to add a nav bar in each of your page. You will have to repeat the code again and again. But with React, you can just create a separate component and call it in the other pages, which makes life so much easier. And then we have Appwrite. Appwrite is a backend service. Now, what does that mean? It means that you don't have to code your backend from scratch. Appwrite handles all of that for us, and it comes with a lot of features like authentication, storage, serverless functions, and my personal favorite are functions. In fact, we're going to use that a lot in the application. So this is how our final product is going to look like. It has a landing page, it has a GitHub board, and it has a dashboard where we can see the jobs. But how is it working and what is our tech stack? We're going to go in detail on that. So let's understand it with the help of a flowchart. First things first, we will have a landing page, and from the landing page, the user will be directed to the dashboard. But in between that, they will have to sign up with their GitHub account, which makes perfect sense because we are getting the data from the GitHub. Now, Appwrite has a lot of OAuth providers. One of them is GitHub, which makes your life easier. Once they sign in with the GitHub, a function will be called. Now, what of Appwrite functions? How do they work? We'll get into it later. Right now, just consider it like a normal function. It will fetch the user's GitHub data by making a call to GitHub REST API and then store it on the Appwrite's database. Once that's done, we have the user's information. But what about the job information? We need that too, right? So in the background, we have this cron function running. Now, if you don't know what a cron function is, it is a function that repeats itself after a specific interval of time, like once in every minute, once in every second, once in every week, however you like to schedule it. So we have this function running and it scrapes the data from the internet and store it on the database. Wait, hold on. What do you mean by scraping the data? Well, so I'm getting the job data from the internet. So there's this website called Internshala and it has a lot of internship openings listed on it. What I do is we will go into its HTML and suppose I want this thing, right? I just get this text from within the HTML tags. Now, if you haven't ever scraped data before, it's fine. We will go through it step by step together. Now we have both the job data and the user's data. Now, from the dashboard, the user can click the browse button, which will then call this function. I think it's safe to say functions are the backbone of this project. So it will call this function that will pre-process the data, match the data, and show them the tailored list of job openings. How will we match the data? We will use this AI algorithm. Wait, hold on. AI? Well, don't worry if you have no experience with AI whatsoever. I will break this algorithm down. We will understand it together and code it together. So who knows? You might learn in your algorithm today. So some prerequisites are, since we are using React, you need to know some basic HTML and JavaScript. For the UI, we are going to use Spring Design, which is Appwrite's design system, along with Tailwind. And if you're not acquainted with any of those, it's fine. We're not going to focus on UI anyways. And then you need to know some basic Python because the web scraping script as well as the matching data algorithm are both coded in Python. So yeah, that's it. Let's get coding. These are the steps that we are going to follow and finally deploy our app. So first things first, setting up. Let's create a new React app, but for that we first need to see if we have Node installed or not. For that, you can just type node-v, and if you see a version number, then that's great. And if you don't, then you need to install Node in your system first. So head over to Node's official website and download and install Node from here. Now, if you're wondering what Node is, it is basically a Java runtime environment. So React requires Node to run and manage the dependencies. Once you're done installing, head back over to the terminal, navigate to the place where you want to create your new project. I'm going to create my project in the Appwrite folder on my desktop and then type the command npx create react app and then the name of the app and press enter. Cool. Meanwhile, it's creating our app for us. Let's check out the docs. Checking out docs is a good practice. So we're gonna go to getting started for web. Yeah, the dark mode. Okay, it says first we need to create a new project. So head over to cloud.appwrite.io and once you sign in, you will see the screen. You can see my old projects here. So click on create project, type the project name, whatever you want it to be. And oh yeah, you can also add a custom ID if you want. Okay, our project is created. Now the next step is to add our platform. So click on web app and type the name of your project. And for the host name, we can just go with the static sign and then click on next. Okay, so now we need to install AppWrite SDK. Let's see if our app is created or not. Alrighty, our app is ready. Let me just resize the window. So let's cd into the folder and you can see everything is up. Now open it in your favorite code editor. I use VS Code personally. I really love it. I think a lot of people use VS Code. Let's open the terminal. By the way, did you know there's the shortcut control plus backtick and your terminal opens? I had no idea. All right, let's add the command to install AppWrite SDK here. So we're going to copy it and then paste it back right here. But if you don't know what SDK is, it stands for Software Development Kit, which means it has all the tools, libraries that are required for things to run perfectly. Okay, let's look into what all dependencies that we need. We would need UUID, which is used to create unique IDs. Then we need React route to DOM. So it is used to define routes. We will also add Appwrite's design system, that is Ping Design. Let's copy it and write the commands npii. Okay, cool. Meanwhile, they are installing, let's look into the file structure. In the Node modules folder, we have all the dependencies that are required for the app. In the public folder, we have all these static files. In the source folder, index.js is our entry point here. And in package.json, we have all the metadata and the dependencies listed. All right. We also need to add Tailwind. Let's copy this command and paste it in the terminal. Now, once it's installed, we need to initialize it. Copy, paste. Now we need to add this in appwrite.config.js file. In the end, here's the file. Let's replace the content. Cool. Okay, let's copy this and paste it in index.css. We will delete all this and now we will type npm start and our app will start running on localhost 3000. Everything is running perfectly. Okay, we need to import a Ping design module first. So just copy this and in index.js file, we are gonna paste it. Cool. Now, if we head back to our Appwrite console, we need to import this. We will copy it and in the source folder, we will create a new folder with the name of Appwrite. And inside the Appwrite folder, we will create a new JS file. We will name it appwrite.js. All right, we will paste the import statement here. Next up, we will need to create a client. So copy this piece of code, head back, paste it here. So we have the endpoint and the project ID all set up. Cool. Now it's time to make our first request. Let's copy this and paste it here. So in the auth section, you will see all the newly created users, all right? So we are creating a new user. Let's wrap it up in a function, create user, and export it so we can use it in the other files. Let's test it out. Head over to app.js and remove all this unwanted code. We will just add a button and give it a class of button. It is a predefined Ping design class. It automatically adds styling to a button. All right, we will name it create user and yeah, a pretty good looking button we have here. Now it's time to add functionality to it. We will add on click and pass this function that we created. So first we need to import the function from Appwrite and then call it here. We're going to save it and let's open up the console as well and test it out. Okay, we get the user response back. So we have all these attributes created at and all the stuff. And if we refresh it, yay, we successfully made our first request. Okay, you guys, we made our first request, which means everything is working perfectly fine. On to the next step, that is adding auth in our application. But before we dive into coding, what is OAuth? So OAuth basically lets you sign in with your existing account. In our case, it's GitHub, without actually sharing your password with that website that you're using. So for example, you're using one of my websites, that is call it taxi.com, and you need to sign in with your GitHub. Now, you don't trust me with your email and password because instead of encrypting it and saving it, I could actually just use it for who knows malicious purposes. So instead of that, if you're using auth, you will be directed to the GitHub authorization page and enter your credentials there. And once GitHub authorizes you, you are directed back to my website. So that's how it works on the surface. Let's code it and see it in action. Navigate to your project and head over to the settings of OAuth. Click on GitHub, enable it. Now we need the app ID and the app secret. For that, we need to create a GitHub auth app. So head over to the settings and then the developer settings. And there we'll register our auth app. Click on new auth app and then enter the credentials. In the callback URL, we will enter the URL provided by Appwrite here. So copy it and paste it back here and register our app. Cool. Now this client ID, we will add in the app ID here and need to generate client secret. And after authorizing ourselves, we will just simply copy it and paste it here and click on update. Voila, it's done. Alrighty, so the last step is to authorize the user. That we will do by adding this line of code. It takes three parameters: provider, success, and a failure URL. Cool. Let's head over to VS Code. Okay, so I have some routes defined here using our React Router DOM library. So the root route directs us to the landing page. We have this landing page in the components folder. It looks something like this. It has a get started button. Cool. And then if the sign in is successful, we will be directed to the success page. And similarly, there's this failure page as well. All three of them are in the components folder. Okay, let's add the code to trigger authorization. So we will define this getUpAuth function and copy this piece of code, paste it here. Obviously, it's going to be an easing function. And change the provider to GitHub. We need to import accounts from Appwrite.js, export it from here. Okay, let's define our success and failure routes as well, thanks to Copilot. Let's see if everything is working fine or not. Okay, pressing this button, got directed to the GitHub authorization page, which is cool. Just putting in my credentials. I'm getting redirected. Woohoo! Everything is working fine. Back in the Appwrite console in the auth section, we will see a new user is added here. Okay, let's delete this guy. We don't need him. Alrighty, if you face any redirection issues, make sure your cookies are enabled in the browser. So in Chrome, you can head over to the settings and here in the cookies and other data, make sure all cookies are allowed is selected. You would be good to go. So I added some UI code for our landing page to actually look like landing page. And I made the success URL and the failure URL a little bit more dynamic. So this is how everything looks like. I think it looks pretty good. I really like the color scheme. It's actually Appwrite's color scheme. Okay, now we are done and dusted with the auth part. Alright, you guys, the next step is to get the user's GitHub data and store it on our database. So, what all data do you think will be important in our case? Let me show you. First, we will get the text from the introductory README because I think it gives a really good insight of what the person is into. Like mine is not that cool. You can check out this guy's README. And then next up, we will extract the languages the person has used in the repos. Like, you know how GitHub mentioned is the language here? So yeah, these are the two things that we are going to fetch when we make requests to the GitHub API. So what we're going to do is we will make a function that take the user's provider access token as an input, makes call to the GitHub API for us, get all this information that we need, and send it back. Then we will save it on our database. But where do we get this access token from? Let me show you. All right, we are back in our success.jsx. But before we do anything, we first need to check whether the user is logged in or not. So for that, there's this function called account.get. Make sure account is imported. We're just gonna console log and see what it returns. Copilot is really handy. Yeah, so we get this response back and it has user's email, name, and all the other stuff. So what we're gonna do is set a variable and change its state, all right, and wrap it up in a use effect. Make sure you have imported it. All right. Now, if the value of user dot is logged in is true, only then we will proceed further. In return, also, we will do conditional rendering. So if user.log is true, return this. If it is false, component called false session. Let me import it here as well. So if the user tries to access the success page, they will see this. Yes, we will add a try catch too. So I added a catch here, so we won't see that error anymore. Cool. Now that we have checked if the user is logged in or not, we need to get the token, right? For that, we will use this function called get session, and we will replace this to current. Now we should be good to go. All right, so we get this object back, and it has all these things like provider and the provider access token. We will add the code to execute the function here. Once we get all the information that we need from the GitHub, we will try to update the database. Now, if the database does not have any existing entry of the user, it will create a new entry. All right, now let's see how to create this function. Oh, hold on. What are these functions that I'm talking about for so long? So Appwrite functions allows us to extend and customize Appwrite's functionalities, and this is one of my favorite features. Yeah, you can read the docs if you want to. First step, setting up the CLI. For that, you need to have git installed, and we just copy this command and paste it here. Our CLI will be installed. Then just check appwrite-v, and if it shows a version number, then we are good to go. Then we got to log in using appwrite login command, enter our credentials. Once that's done, we need to initialize the project using appwrite init project, and then we will select link to the existing project. Then we need to initialize the function using appwrite init function. Let's name it get GitHub, and then let it have a unique ID and runtime will be Python. We have a new folder with the index.py file there. First things first, we need to define these variables. So if you just head over to the functions and select your function, go to its settings, you will find this update variables section. There you need to define all three of the variables, the endpoint, project ID, the third one, that is the API key. But for the API key, what you need to do is you need to create a new one. So in overview, you will find a new API key option. You can select the scopes, and once it's created, you can just copy it and define it as well. Alrighty. To verify if everything is working fine or not, you can deploy the function through the terminal and then execute it from Appwrite console. Okay, so I went ahead and coded the function. First things first, we imported the libraries that we need. Then I got the access token from the payload, that is the input, and passed it here to the API. And I got the user's name, avatar URL, username, made a list of the languages that were used by the user, got the README. So here's the catch. I got the README of the repository where the name of the repository is same as the username, which makes sense. And then I pre-processed it. Then I passed all of this. Now make sure that it is necessary to return a JSON as a response, or else our function will fail to execute. And then I wrapped everything in a try except, and let's deploy and execute it like we did last time and see if everything works fine. Alrighty, after executing, got this output back. It has everything we need. Let's define the execute access from function settings. We will set it to all users since we only permit our users to use this function. Then let's create a database where we will store all this data. Name it user data. And then I'll create a collection and name it GitHub data. After that, we need to define all the attributes. So here's the list of attributes. You can add it on your own. Then we need to update the permissions of our collection. I'll select all users and give them the permission to create, read, and update this collection. They should not have the permission to delete it. Okay, y'all, now we can complete our code here. So for executing the function, we will use this. For this, we need to import functions in our AppWrite file. And for creating a document, wait, hold on. What is this document collection database? What are you talking about, Dakshi? If you don't understand all this, let me show you something. So in AppWrite, we can organize a data in a three-level hierarchy. So on the top, we have a database, which is a group of collections, and collections is a group of documents. So for example, we have a database of a zoo, and each collection there represents different species. For example, we have a collection of pandas, and then each document in that collection that is about different members and their attributes like height, weight, etc. So yeah, hope you get the idea. Yeah, so on a serious note, we will create the document using this. For this, we need to import database. And for updating the document, we will use this. All right, back to VS Code. So I imported everything here. You can go ahead and do it as well. And back here in our success file, let's import them as well. We need function and databases. Okay, so I added the code to execute the function. This is the function ID. You can find it in AppWrite console from here. But here's the thing, AppWrite functions return response as a string, so we parsed it to JSON. And then we have a try catch here. If update document function fails, it means there is no entry for the current user and it will call the create document. So I added the code to update the document. This is the document ID. This is the collection ID. You can find it from AppWrite console. Now we used user's GitHub username as the document ID. So it will search for document having ID as this username and then update all these values. And if it is successful, then it will navigate the user to the dashboard. Now let's add the code to create the document. Similarly, here also the same database ID, collection ID, and the document ID will be user's username. And if it is successful, the user will be directed to dashboard. So I created this component called dashboard, nothing fancy here. And I imported it up here. And then I navigated there using use navigate. Okay, so I went ahead and tested it out, but it is not giving us the desired result. In fact, it is showing the value of is logged in false. Let me see what the issue is. Okay, so the value of is logged in is not updated when the condition is being checked. You know what? We are going to just remove it because we don't really need it. This whole block of code runs when we get a input from account.get anyways. So let's remove it and see if things work out for us. Okay, so in our console, we have the subject. It is returned by a function. It has all the information that created that and all the fields that we added. Let's check if we have an entry in a database. Woohoo! We finally added users GitHub data. Also, there are chances that the value of email is also not getting updated. Instead, I created this variable that saves the value of the email from this response. And this is what I passed here in the update document and here in the create document. So we don't face any weird issues due to this set state later on. So I want to show you guys something. Till now we have this landing page and we have this success page that does everything in the background. And then we redirect it to the dashboard. So yeah, I kind of redecorated the dashboard. And even though I said I won't focus on the UI, I want to tell you how I got this information back from AppWrite database. So back in the code, I have this component called navbar, and it has this function called list documents. So what list document does is it returns all the documents that satisfy this query. Now, the condition I added in the query is this equal one, that when the email attribute is equal to the email that we get from account.get, it will return this document, and then the value of the variables like avatar URL, username, name, and email will be all set and will be displayed. But here's the catch. For this to work, you first need to create an index in your AppWrite console. Let me show you how I did that. So here in your collection, if you if you just head over to indexes, you will see this option of create index. We will select index type to be unique and attribute is obviously email. We need the email here and click on create. I've already created it. Okay, so it's showing failed here, even though it's working for us just fine. Maybe because it takes time to reflect the changes here. All right, you guys, done and dusted with that part. Also, my throat is a little bad now, so excuse my voice. But yeah, we are halfway there. And if you made it till here, big round of applause for you. Next up, we will get the job data by scraping the web using Beautiful Soup. Now, if you haven't ever scraped the web before, it's fine. I'll tell you how to do it because I believe that it will always come in handy in future. But if you know how to do it, you can go ahead and scrape this website. So it has a lot of internship openings, and I've placed the engineering tag here because it makes sense since we are getting the data from GitHub, right? And yeah, so what we would need is the name of the company, the name of the position, all the other information about the job, maybe icon to show it to the user. Also, you will notice that if I click here, I will be redirected to this page. And it has all this information like skills required and all the stuff. So I think this is what we would need for matching the user with the job opening. So yeah, you can go ahead and scrape it out. Also, one more thing I want to mention. So what you can do is iterate over this. So if I go to page two, I will have it will show more jobs. Similarly, so you can iterate over it and get as many jobs as possible. I'm not sure where it ends though. Let us check it out. Okay, like you can see the endpoint and stop there. So yeah. All right, let's see how to scrape this website. So I'm going to create this Python file. Don't worry, we will delete it later. And first things first, these are the libraries that we would need. So if you see any errors here, it means you don't have the libraries installed. So you can just do pip install and the name of the library. All right. Then we need the URL of the page we want to scrape. So in our case, just gonna quickly copy this and create a variable HTML and request dot get paste the URL here and let's see what it returns. All right, so we have the HTML of the page. This HTML is exactly equal to this HTML that we see here. Let me parse it and show it to you. All right. So if you're trying to scrape some other website and you're getting some errors here, like you're not getting this desired HTML, so there are some workarounds that you can do. Either you can add this header here. I will add it in the repo code so you can find it there and just simply pass it here like this. If this also didn't work out for you, then maybe the website owner really doesn't want their data to be scraped. But you can browse for other ways and maybe comment them down below so it helps other people as well. when you go to inspect, you see this arrow here. So select whatever element you want to scrape. For example, I want like the company name, right? So I will just click on this. Here you can see it is inside a tag with the class link view button and stuff. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna copy this class name and here we will create a loop like for I in soup dot find all, and since it is a tag we will write a here, and class make sure you add the underscore here, and we will write the class here. All right, let's see what we get in the result. So this strip basically removes all the extra spaces around the text. All right, we have the company names. Cool. Okay, so I think you got the basic idea. So you can go ahead and select whatever item you want and then scrape it. But make sure that the class of the element is unique to that particular thing that you are scraping. Uh, if that's not the case, you can go to the parent element and see if that class is unique. For example, here, the job title inside the A tag, this class is not unique. Like I've tried it and it's not unique to this particular element. So what we're going to do is we will just use the class of H3. So you need to do the extra work and find it out. Okay, so now let's see how to get to this page. So if you notice here, I have this link in the href, and this is the same link that opens up when I click this, right? So I need the text inside the href. So what I'll do is, well, I added this, then I'll just add write href in the square brackets and see what happens. Oh, yeah. So the href does not belong to the h3. It actually belongs to the a tag inside the h3. So yeah, this is how we get the href. But you see, this is like an incomplete link. So what we're gonna do is add this in front of this thing. And all right, we have finished link. Now again, just the way we were making call to this URL, in the same way, I iterate over all these links and get the skill required and other stuff. So I want you all to go ahead and try doing it on your own. Consider it a little challenge so we can see how much we learn. And yeah, let's wrap it all in a function. Okay, so I went ahead and created a new AppWrite function called getJobData. Oh, by the way, meet my new pet. Now I hope you remember how to make a AppWrite function, but just to recap, these are the steps involved. So we're gonna just initialize the function, select the name and runtime, define the variables from the console, and yeah, would be good to go. Okay, so first things first, we will import all the libraries that we need. These are for web scraping and these are for pre-processing the data. Now, pre-processing means cleaning the data. We will understand the what, why, how of it a bit later. Now make sure you import them in your requirements.txt file as well. So first I made a GET request to this URL and I am iterating over the pages like I told you before. And then I parsed it using HTML parser. I'm gonna initialize a bunch of lists. We are gonna add the data that we scraped from the website into these lists. All right, so first up, let's get the job title, got the company name, got the location, got the stipend, and then got the info page and scrape the data from there as well. Now, it was a part of the task that I gave y'all. So you can go through this code. I actually scraped a bunch of things from there, like responsibilities, requirements, skills required about the company and stuff. Yeah. Okay, so the plan is that we will create a tag list that is combination of a bunch of stuff like the job title, skills required, job requirement, about the company. So basically, things that matter when we are matching it with the user's profile, right? So we are going to pre-process them all and combine them into a tag list. Now we pre-process the data to clean the data to remove unwanted words, unwanted symbols, and you know how computers consider this and this two different words. So like we lowercase everything. So yeah, now that we have the data that we want, let's save it up all in the database. For that, let's create a database. Okay, so back in console, I created a database called job data and it has a collection called Unto Inshallah. And then I defined all the attributes. There are total 9 attributes. So I mentioned the attribute type and the size. After that, let's update the permissions as well. We will give the user the permission to create and read, update and delete are not required. And then we'll click on date. Okay, let's take a moment to understand what we're trying to do. So we have a function that scrapes this website. But this website is dynamic, right? So instead of a normal function, we made a cron function that would repeatedly scrape the data and update the database. Now we can't just keep on adding data in our database. Instead, what we are supposed to do is first we will check whether the current job opening already exists in our database or not. If it does, then we're just gonna update its contents. And if it does not, that's when we are gonna create a new document. Now, how will we do it is there's this update document method that simply updates the document, and then there's this create document that simply creates the document. But hold on, how will we check whether the job opening already exists in our database or not? For that, we will use this list document method. So it takes this query as a parameter and return all the documents that satisfies this query. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for documents with the same URL. So you remember how in here, when we used to click on a job opening, it redirected us to this URL, right? So this URL is going to be unique. So that's what we're going to pass in this query. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and try to write the code for this on your own. Consider it a little challenge. Then I'll show you how I did it. Okay, so I hope that went well for you. Let me show you my code. So I iterated over all the elements in our list. Then I applied list documents to see if there's any duplicate document there. If it returns a valid response, there will be an ID, and I'll pass this ID in place of document ID here, and we will update it. Else, it will throw an error, and we will catch it here. And then we will create a document instead. And the document ID will be created by this id.unique. And once that's all done, it will return us a success response. Also, for all this to work, make sure that you have the URL index made in your Appwrite console, as well as you have imported ID and query up here using these statements. And to top it all off, I wrapped the whole thing in a try and accept. So let's go ahead and deploy our function. So I hope you remember the command appwrite deploy function, select the function name, and okay, it's now ready to execute. So this part always gives me anxiety. Okay, let's click on execute now. Okay, so our function has failed, and in the errors, it says that operation timed out. Okay, so Appwrite functions have a default timeout value set. By default, it's 15 seconds, but our function cannot scrape the whole thing and add it to the database within 15 seconds. So we're gonna change it to 900. That is the maximum value it can have. All right, click on update. Actually, you know what? Go here in appwrite.json and change the timeout value of this function here because when we change it from console, it gets overridden when we deploy our function again. Okay, that should work. Let's deploy it and execute it just like the last time and see if it works.
One eternity later.
Okay, we got the success message. Cool. Let's check out the database. Okay, we have so many entries here. We have almost 800 entries. That's cool. But one thing is missing. That is, we need to set up the schedule. So just head over to the settings here and you will see this update schedule. If you want to learn about cron syntaxes, you can. I'm going to set it once a day at 3 a.m. For that, the syntaxes. And let's click on update. But hold on. If we keep on adding data to our database like this, it will become really big. So if you want, you can add this function that deletes documents based on the updated at variable. So if it passes a certain amount of time, then we can simply delete it from our collection. So here's how it should work. If you want, you can add it as well. I think it would be really helpful. Now that that's done, I'm going to show you something. So when we go on all jobs, it shows us all the jobs. And I have this filter option that filters on basis of descending order of stipend and like work from home. So, and if you click on any job, then you will be directed there. How did I do it now? Let me show you. So I have this all job file here, and I simply used list documents, nothing fancy, but the value of query changes based on whether the user has selected all or stipend or like work from home. So yeah, the query changes based on that. Make sure you make indexes for all of them in your Appwrite console. It sends all of the data it gets back to this company card. And this company card accept a prop here and then show them the results. Also, I want to mention something. The list document has a limit of 25 documents per request. If you want to show more documents, you can actually use pagination here and yeah, maybe read the docs and try to add it on your own here. That would be a great exercise for you. Okay, you guys, the last and the final and the most important step, that is matching the data. And we're all super excited to see the results. But let's first understand how it all would work and deep dive into our algorithm. Okay, so we have this matching function. It takes users' email as input and returns the matching documents with a match score. Now, what's happening inside this function? Well, what this function is doing is, so you remember we got the user's GitHub data and we retrieved their README and languages and saved it on a database. Similarly, we scraped the job data and remember, we made this tags column, which had all the information that is required to match it with the user's profile, right? So we're going to pre-process both of these. Now, pre-processing, as I told you, it means cleaning the data, removing unwanted symbols, words, etc. And once pre-processing is done, we will feed them to the algorithm, and the algorithm will do its magic, and voila, we have a tailored list of job openings. But now, what happens inside this algorithm? Well, so what happens is we use this TF-IDF algorithm, which calculates the importance of each word in a document and kind of returns a vector. All right. So we have these vectors now. Suppose this is the vector that shows user's profile, and the rest are the job openings. So we will use this algorithm called cosine similarity, and it will calculate the cosine angle of this vector, the user profile vector, with all the other documents, and the one with the smallest angle is obviously more similar to the user profile than the one that's farther away. So that's how we get our top matching documents. So, yeah, I hope you get the basic idea of how things are working here. Now, let's create our function. Okay, let's quickly initialize a function from the CLI, define the variables, and yeah, first step, importing libraries. So NLTK is a natural language processing library. It is used for manipulating text data. And don't forget to mention it here. Let's remove all this code. So we need to download the stop words and this library for tokenizing the words. What that is, I'll tell you later on. Okay, we have already defined these variables. Now let's get the job data from a database. And for that, we will use list documents. And by default, list documents has this limit of 25 documents per request. So we will define this function called getAllDocs. And what this function will do is it will repeatedly make requests. It takes the ID of the last document and pass it in the query dot cursor after and makes the request again. And there's this try catch loop that checks if there are more documents or not. And then in the end, it simply returns all docs. So let's call the function and save the ID and tags of our jobs in a dictionary. Once we have the job data, let's get the user's data. So we have user's email in our payload, that is the input. And we are using this document to get all the other information. And we are going to define these three variables, saving the user's ID, language, and readme. Okay, time for the final part that is matching the data. So let's define this function that takes users' details and the tag documents as an input. And first up, let's pre-process everything. So we're going to take the user's language, lowercase everything, and then we will combine the user language and user readme together. So we have this variable user text that denotes all of the user data, right? Now let's remove stop words. Now stop word means words that don't add to the meaning like this, the, in, at. So we need to remove them, right? So first we will tokenize our data. Tokenizing means separating our entire text into words. For example, I tokenized this sentence and now it's separated into small words. So we're simply going to filter them out from our user text. And then we will convert the user text as well as the tag documents into vectors using this function that we will define later on, don't worry. And once we have both of the vectors, we will iterate over the tag vectors and we will find the similarity score between that particular job opening and the user vector. And finally, we have the stop documents that have our job document ID and the similarity score, and it is sorted in descending order of similarity score. And finally, going to return it. Before we code these functions, let's see the mathematics behind it. So TF-IDF is a product of two terms. Term frequency divided by total number of terms. So it's multiplied because we find the inverse. And it basically tells the importance of that thing with respect to the rest of the document. Now we have the job vector and the user vector, and we need to find the cosine angle between them. So what are we going to do is, so you might be familiar with this formula, right? To find the cosine angle, we will just find the dot product of the two vectors and divide by the normalized product of those two. And yeah, so these two vectors we are getting from this TF-IDF, right? So let's code it. Okay, so we have a function that calculates the TF-IDF vector. For that, we first need to calculate the term frequency for each token, and then we will calculate the vector. We are simply multiplying the TF with the IDF, but for that we need to calculate IDF first. So let's define our function calculate IDF. And this is basically the formula log of total documents upon 1 plus total documents with that token. You don't need to really remember this, just forget what I said. And yeah, let's define the cosine similarity function. It takes two vectors. Obviously, one of them is going to be the user vector and the other one is going to be the job one. And it finds the dot product and it then normalizes both of the vectors. And if any of them is zero, then it returns zero because then we will get an error because we are dividing our dot product with zero and it's not defined or whatever. It's a huge debate. Is it not defined? It's a huge debate, right? Okay. Okay, guys, this should work. Let's call this function in the end and let's write our res.json. We will return documents here and let's wrap it all in a try catch. It's always helpful and it's always a good practice to do it. Okay, let's deploy it and execute it and see what happens. Okay, passing our email. Okay, it failed and we have a timeout error. Okay, so by default, as you know, 15 seconds is the timeout. We will change it to 300. That is 5 minutes. It should be enough. Let's execute it again and see if it works. Okay, we have a list here with document ID and the match score. So back in the dashboard, we're gonna call this function and once we get the result, we need to make the call to the job data database and get all the documents that are listed in the result here. So let's add the code to do that. So we are getting the documents using this get document, and then we are saving the scores here. And once we get everything, we are passing it here in the scorecard. So let's create a new JSX file. Let's name it scorecard.jsx. So we have this score percentage. It basically calculates the percentage out of 100, and then I'm multiplying it with this to scale the values. Okay, let's see how it looks. So let's click on Get Start. Oopsies, we forgot to import scorecard here. Okay, now let's click on Get Started. Back to our home page. Let's click on Browse. Now a function will be triggered and it is doing all the work behind the scenes. And it does take time. Maybe you can make the page a little bit more dynamic. Okay, we got the results and it looks pretty good. It has all the details that would be required. And I got a NLP recommendation, which makes sense. So I think it's pretty accurate. And if we click on it, we'll be redirected to the URL. Works fine. And then I also added this little feedback form here. So you can type in your feedback and click on submit. Now, I think you can guess how I made it. So I have this feedback collection in my users data database and the feedback box disappears. Nothing a little conditional rendering can't do. And then finally we have this logout button and it basically deletes the current session using this endpoint and navigates the user to the dashboard. All right, we did it. We are finally done with our project and I hope you learned something new today. And I hope you had fun building with me. If you face any errors, make sure you followed everything step by step. Or you can go check out the docs, or you can ask your doubts in Appwrite Server. And believe me when I say all your doubts will be cleared there. And yeah, see you next time. Till then, happy coding. Let's see how to deploy our app on Vercel. For that, make sure you have your code up on GitHub. Then go to Vercel's official website. And if it's your first time here, create your account. I already have one. I'll click on add new and click on project here. Then I'll select my project that is JobRite YT and then I'll simply deploy it from here. Now it will take time and once it's, woohoo, we did it. It's deployed.